Yeah, very good evening to all of you. Don't be worried about my papers. I'm not about to deliver a very long statement here. Thank you very much, Richie, for the kind introduction and warm welcome. And I'd like to start by thanking the Cyrus Vance Center for International Justice for hosting this great event. I would in particular like to thank, I think he's come for that, Mr. Alexander Papachristou, for his unwavering dedication to the cause of freedom and democracy in Africa. It's hard to overstate the importance it is to have reliable friends when you are in the trenches fighting for freedom. And Alex has been a source of great inspiration to many of us in Africa. I am particularly grateful to him for his wise counsel and support, always reminding us why democracy and the rule of law really matters. Thank you, Alex, for your support and friendship to the people of Uganda and Africa. Thank you. I'd like also to thank Alex's staff who've worked tirelessly to make this event possible. And in particular, I'd like to single out Dr. Branda Kombo for her leadership in organizing this event. I would also like to extend a special thanks to you, the African Affairs Committee of the New York City Bar, for co-sponsoring this event. I understand from reliable sources that you've had a bulwark supporting the rule of law in Africa. I salute you for your dedication and contributions to better Africa and better world. I see in this audience many friends and familiar faces. Thank you for welcoming me and for making me feel at home. It's good to be amongst friends, and it is especially inspiring to be amongst those who labor to promote justice and democracy around the world. So, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it's a unique and singular honor for me to be here today to address you and to talk to the finest about the ideals and pillars of open and democratic society. In a democratic society and in a diverse and plural society, it is the temple of justice that we go to for peaceful and just adjudication of disputes. It is at the New York State Supreme Court, and the building where it is written, and with good measure, that true administration of justice is the firmest pillar of good governance. And it is also in the founding document of the modern constitutional government, the Magna Carta, where it's written that to no one will we sell, and to no one will we refuse or delay right or justice. And these statements go to the foundation of the rule of law. Now, ladies and gentlemen, as you've been indeed informed, I am an African. And I come from a place called Uganda, which is at the heart of Africa. Uganda is a great country. Those of you who have had an interaction with it will have no question about the unique beauty and the rich endowment that our country is favored with. Indeed, we still borrow the words of Churchill in describing it as the Pearl of Africa. It is from this country that I have come, and I'd like to first make some concessions that have already been leaked to you, that I am before you as a prisoner, out on bail. And I've been a prisoner very, very many times in this good country of ours. And in this good country of ours, we have never had any leader hand over power peacefully to another leader. Every single leader of our country has been bombed out of office. And whoever has assumed the reins of power has bombed his way into office. And that is at the heart of my discussion with you today, because that is also at the heart of what has characterized post-colonial Africa. In the just concluded election, where I have been charged with treason, my treason charges are based on two things. One, that I have called for a campaign of defiance. And two, that I declared myself a winner of an election. Now, ladies and gentlemen, my prepared text will be distributed to you at the end of this engagement. So for the benefit of time, I will not go through it. I just want to highlight the salient features contained therein, and hopefully then use them as a basis for engagement after my remarks, that you may make comments or indeed seek clarification or ask questions. You see, we are talking about a country which has no citizens. The citizen, and this is not just for Uganda, for the most part of Africa, the biggest challenge is that we are talking about countries without citizens. And this, quite obviously, is a phenomenon that you are all familiar with when Africa was dominated by force through the colonial advent. Because in Africa we had very primitive weapons to defend ourselves, and the advent of gunpowder rendered our own weapons completely insufficient to do the job. So when the colonial administration came in, all our citizens were not just dominated, but deprived of the citizenship. Citizenship is about being able to make decisions on how, who will govern your country, on how the resources of the country will be used. And these were the institutions that in the country that they serve the citizens. And these were the things that were taken away at colonialism. The decision to decide how or who governs us, the decision to decide on our resources, and the decision on how institutions are run and for whose benefit. And therefore, we changed from being citizens who are masters of our land, who have authority over what happens in the country, and who have authority over its resources and institutions, to subjects. Africans became subjects. And those who had the force of arms became the masters. So I am born by subjects of the Queen of England, not by citizens of Uganda. My parents were subjects of the Queen of England. They had no rights. They did not have any say even on their own labor, how they engage in their own labor. And that is, for some of you who may have experienced that, a very, very painful situation to be in indeed. And no doubt that's why there was agitation for freedom from colonial administration, which again, all of us are very familiar with. My engagement today is simply what happened at the time of independence. Because whereas indeed our countries were granted independence, which would have meant that the countries were returned to the owners of the countries, that we changed from being citizens, from being subjects to now become citizens and controllers of our countries. Actually, that is not what, that is the one thing that did not happen. The return, the independence simply transferred control of the coercive tools that were used to dominate and control us into the hands of cliques of political elites that then used those tools, same instruments, to run the same institutions, to run the same ideology that we had been run by during the colonial administration. Africans, and certainly Ugandans, remained subjects, did not become citizens. The only difference is that they were not subjects now of foreign people, they were subjects of our own compatriots. And some of our people, in fact, who literally believed that there had been independence, tried to exercise the freedom that comes with that independence, and were rudely shocked. Those were the first ones to end up in prisons for a very long time, some dying there, and others indeed were not so lucky. They were brutally murdered. And everybody reminded that the order remains the same. In this order, the leader is the master, and the subjects are the servants. And that is what has not changed. And the laws and constitutional framework that is developed for that are laws to service the master, not the people. So I think the terminologies that have been indeed used about rule by law, not rule of law, we have lived that practically ourselves, where laws are made to control the subjects, not to facilitate them to do what they ought to do as free citizens. And indeed, laws keep on being tightened and tightened in favor of those who exercise power and authority, and against those who should be the citizens of our countries. And all the institutions that indeed had been developed by the colonial authority have remained the same institutions, serving the masters, not the people who are supposed to be the citizens of our countries. In the colonial period, the police was feared because it was the arm that enforced the rule of those who were the masters against the would-be citizens of our countries. And so whenever anybody detected the police was around, they would look for the nearest place to take cover. That has not changed. Today, in my country, and unfortunately we had intended to have some slides that could show some of the things that are happening, unfortunately, because of some miscommunication, we couldn't get it in place. In 2016, in my country, more than half a century after independence, you would see the police and how it brutalizes those who would be the masters of their country. And indeed, in my country, when people see the police, they say, they have come. In local languages, they say, baze, they have come. And that is the signal for everybody to scamper. They have come. The fear that comes from institutions that are supposed to protect them, the institutions to which they are supposed to run, and not institutions they are supposed to run away from. The courts function in pretty much the same way. You cannot access justice unless you are privileged to either have a lot of resources on your part, not just to get services of lawyers who will interpret and present your case in an orderly way, but actually to do a little more in facilitating the judge to give you the judgment that you want to get. So the judiciary is not available to the ordinary folks. First, because of the complexity of an ordinary person accessing the judiciary. They will never have, the kind of resources and so on to prepare a case and file a case and proceed with it in the manner that is prescribed by our rules and regulations. And certainly will not have the kind of resources to facilitate that process, as I have said. So you'll find that the judiciary is there to service the privileged few. And certainly those in authority will quite normally dictate if it is a matter that is political, like that affects the power relations, then they must do what the master says. In Uganda, I must hail the resilience of our judicial officers, actually, because quite a number of them have taken a stand and has been very costly to them. The first African Chief Justice, who was not very lucky under Idi Amin. He was arrested from his chambers, and we've never seen him again, nor known where his remains could be. And this has been the case in subsequent administrations. In the current administration of General Yoweri Museveni, the High Court has been attacked twice by the military to stop them taking a decision that they wanted to take, and actually inflicted injuries and damage on the judicial officers in those attacks. In the second attack, the judiciary, again, to their credit, protested and laid down their tools. For more than a week, the whole judiciary in Uganda was closed down. And during that closure, the statements of the president were indeed very instructive. He said, you know, we are the ones in charge. And if you want me to go back to the bush, you can continue doing what you are doing. Of course, later on, they appeared to apologize for the nasty incidents, but the message was sufficiently delivered. So the institutions, all the institutions, and we talk about having elections. Elections cannot be anything but a farce under such circumstances, where the security of those elections are in the